We'll bring up our first speaker. Welcome Kathryn Dyer from the BLM Nevada State Office.
Okay. So this is definitely my first Ignite session, and I did practice, but you may not notice that as I give this presentation. So. Oh, and I don't even have to do anything. So as Emily said, I'm the Nevada State Program Lead for BLM, and I'm also the National Outcome-Based Grazing Project Lead. And so that's what I'll be talking with you guys about today, is how this national initiative of outcome-based grazing authorizations ties in, really relies on the shared monitoring and shared stewardship of all the contributors. Okay, so I just wanted to give, recognizing there's different backgrounds out here, just want to introduce you to the enormity of the BLM range program. We have over 18,000 permits nationally, over 21,000 allotments nationally. You can recognize that there's diversity, and 15 seconds isn't much. So we have only 452 or 326 range specialists nationwide, and you can see we're having permits expire quicker than we are renewing them. We have 11 projects in this outcome-based national initiative, and you can see they're distributed throughout the West, and they're great diversity in terms of size, ecosystems, public-private land. So we wanted to learn from those projects in order to understand how to complement the already existing range program. So objectives, monitoring, flexible terms and conditions, and a list of possible actions. And these were derived largely from this legal paper, which looked at what BLM has lost, or what federal agencies have lost most consistently on: failure to establish objectives, or define monitoring, failure to define thresholds, and failure to define responses. We have two policies currently with how to incorporate flexibility in livestock grazing. One of them is how to incorporate it into the NEPA analysis, and one of them is how to engage in cooperative monitoring, right in line with the symposia here. So the cooperative monitoring plans are required to have a clear definition of what the objectives are that you're working towards, what the monitoring methods and protocol are, who's going to be collecting the data, when the data is going to be collected, and how it's going to be used on any given year. And as well, it needs to include what flexibilities the permittees are going to need to discuss with BLM prior to implementing, what they can do without discussion, and how to record those things through the year. One project that we have going, I'll give a little case study, is in Lakeview, Oregon. This one has 23 pastures, 6 allotments, 4,300 to 7,000 feet. This is one that was just processed and fully renewed last year under the Outcome-Based Grazing Initiative. So they have a variety of objectives that were, clearly defined in the analysis and carried forward into the permit. And then they have monitoring methods, both short and long term, defined for being able to, see whether all of those objectives are being met on any given year. And these are all monitoring methods that BLM already has very defined protocol for. And then there's flexibility embedded, and so they got a 12-month permit out of these 6 allotments, not meaning they would use any allotment for 12 months, but that they could use it at the appropriate time in the year. They have the option to do a variety of other things. Yeah, it's really quick. So just wanted to say again, we have the cooperative monitoring agreements, which are derived from the components in the cooperative monitoring plans. And what are we going to look at? What are we going to monitor? Where, when, how, and what are we going to do with the information? And so we had a training up there that was very great to have all of the staff and permittees out together on the ground learning the methods and discussing things on the ground. And we've now had 1 full year of implementation, and one thing we're looking at is the best way to, on a nationally consistent level, bring these things together at the end of the year to show what has happened through the year and decide what to do in the out year. Another thing that I want to mention is the outcome-based grazing is not solely ecological objectives. We're also looking at social and cultural objectives. This is from a project here in Nevada, the Wine Cup Gamble. And then we're also looking at ranch objectives, and it might not surprise you that virtually every permittee/rancher out there has an objective of being economically viable to the point that they could pass their ranch on to their children and their children's children. And we're also looking at ranch objectives. We've not really talked about economics before in the BLM permitting world, but the ranch has to be economically viable in order to be sustainable as well. And so looking at some economic objectives. So basically, monitoring is absolutely the cornerstone of outcome-based grazing, and it's a workload that is not possible without the contribution of the BLM and the permittees, as well as a variety of other contributing agencies and entities. I will now take the two best questions.
I think okay, when everything's going well and you are doing what you want to do in the end, this is a great vehicle to follow through. Have you thought about when things go south in the process and how you're going to deal with it? And I'll offer the simple example is you can start out and things go really well in the whole program, then the leader of whoever you're dealing with dies, and then things really go bad. And then you're dealing with a 10-year permit that maybe there's 7 years left on that you need to go a new direction. Have you thought about how you can deal with those issues?
And it's great that you bring that up, because that's definitely one of the things that that I feel this approach is meant to deal with, is the turnover from all sides of the equation. And so having your objectives and your monitoring plan laid out in a way where, regardless of what new, and then your responses to that monitoring. So that's the vital part that has not, always been carried through in past adaptive management efforts. But having that sequence of events laid out means that if a new manager comes in, they don't have to interpret and decide how to respond to some particular condition on the ground. The early livestock removal, or the pasture move, or the water hauling, or the whatever has already been, all these opportunities for change have already been looked at. And conversely, then it goes the other way as well. There's thresholds and responses that could be potentially very beneficial for operators that are being very responsible in their practition of these things. But then there's also thresholds and responses that would allow people to remove themselves from this opportunity should they not be at the place yet to implement it properly. Ooh, which question's better? No.
I was just wondering if you... I was wondering if you were hoping to incorporate some of the lessons learned from outcomes-based grazing into the updates to the grazing regs, and if you, I guess if you have an idea of what direction that may take.
Yes, thank you. So that is, and I will go ahead and say that in this room after lunch is an outcome-based grazing symposia where you will get to hear me talk much more about outcome-based, as well as hear some of the actual project participants discuss in detail some individual projects. And so I'd encourage anyone that's interested in learning more to come back to that. But yes, definitely outcome-based grazing is one of the things in the grazing reg revision that that we're looking at how to capture those flexibilities effectively to, again, make the opportunity available, for responsible permittees and land managers to be able to have timely responses to the conditions that fluctuate so frequently. Okay, thank you.